I've always felt there's a degree of stupidity with Trump support, but in his second term, I think that extends into sheer brain rot. Um, so the latest thing, if you could keep track of it from Trump land, is that a video came from the office of the White House, which apparently showed the Obamas as apes. Now, this would be insulting to anyone, but there's obvious racist connotations there when it's referring to two prominent African Americans, former president and first lady. It's disgusting. Trump initially claimed it was fake news, then it was taken down because Trump is an incompetent clown. He's also a coward, I think, who won't take responsibility for his own actions. And either way, it is Trump's actions, because if, as he claims, this was a staffer, that only shows how incompetent Trump is at the sort of people he picks to be his staffers. If he's having a blatant racist as a staffer, what does that tell you? To those black Trump supporters, I don't know how you reconcile this. I don't know how you reconcile support for a man like Donald Trump with this. Are you going to make excuses? Are you going to say, well, it's taken out of context, let's move on? Is this really the sort of person you want to support? Because Trump does have some black supporters. I don't really understand their logic. I genuinely don't get it. I'm not someone who says, oh, they have to vote for the left because they're a minority. That's not my position. They could be a Republican. They could believe in conservative values, but why would they support someone like Donald Trump? I do not get that. What I've seen online, particularly in the second administration, there was a bit of it in his first, but particularly his second term, is there's these kind of quasi-influencers online. I say quasi-influencer because I don't know to what extent they actually have support or whether they're manufacturing the numbers. You know, if you look at the profiles, it'll say 2 million followers and so on. And it may genuinely be the case. But, you know, people can fiddle with figures. I don't know if that's accurate or not. But they're usually Barbies and Kens, I would call them. You know, they're people who are very artificial when it comes to promoting looks. That's usually a big thing of their, you know, big part of their whole promotional thing. So, you know, the women tend to be full of plastic surgery. The guys tend to be, you know, trying to look like Rambo, but not in a positive way. In a sort of, it just looks very artificial and fake. And it's like, oh, any brain cells that are there injected into their whatever protein shakes they're taking. Now, I'm not bashing that. If you're a bodybuilder, you know, best wishes to you. But when you mix this in with politics, it sort of looks like, yeah, what are you selling here? What is the product? What are you trying to get across? So came across one, and he had, you know, stupid AI generated meme, Trump, the great protector of American women. This is astonishing when you consider that Trump has endorsed some of the most extreme anti-abortion laws, which criminalise women. That's just ironic, you know. When Trump's ICE thugs killed a woman in Minneapolis, a woman who was unarmed. And, you know, they've killed others as well. But that's just... I mean, the thing is, this stuff is so clearly AI generated, and it's so clearly part of the personality cult that it is what it is. It's obvious, but there is a lot of brain rot around that, because they're not interested in converting people. They're just interested in pushing Trump's narrative. I really, really do think that there's fascist symbolism with Trump world. I think it's equivalent, not so much to the Third Reich in Germany, but I think a better comparison is Mussolini's Italy. And again, you know, there's not any two historic comparisons that are exactly alike, but I definitely think there's echoes of it. There's definitely echoes of it. I do think that Donald Trump is a fascist. I think he's a racist. Before, that was one I'd sort of said, well, he's obnoxious, but he's not overtly racist. He is. There's no point beating around the bush on that. Donald Trump is a racist. He comes from a racist family. You know, I think Donald Trump is fundamentally a bad person. I think Donald Trump is a bully at heart. I think Donald Trump is a con man. I think he's one of the most contemptible people on the planet. I put Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin up there as well. So sadly, we're in a situation where the three most powerful men in the world are all scum. And I do believe all three are pure tyrants. Two of them are actual de facto dictators, and one of them wants to be. And it's a sad reflection of our times. It suggests we're in a very singular age where this gets a lot of support. Now, the good news is in America itself, Trump is hated. His administration is hated, exemplified by the huge protests taking place nationwide against ICE. A lot of people who foolishly voted for Trump have now changed their mind. I think they should take some responsibility. They can't just say, if we knew then what we know now, you should have known then, you were warned. So I do think they should take some responsibility, rather than just blame their ignorance. They put him back into the White House despite everything, despite his fueling of the January the 6th violence, his contemptible pardoning of those rioters. They still supported him. So I take a dim view of this thing now that they're maybe realising Trumpism isn't quite worked out the way they wanted it to. If we knew then what we know now. You didn't even have to vote for Harris. You could have went for a third party candidate. So I've limited sympathy with that. I think if they're willing to show some contrition and say, we got it dead wrong, we regret that, then yeah, fine. People can change. No one is perfect. But I really, really wonder about the mindset of certain Trump supporters, and they have their equivalents in the UK and certain reform voters. I'm not generalising. I'm not saying everyone who votes reform. I have a few subscribers that I respect who vote reform. I certainly don't agree with them on that, but I can tell that they're open-minded, and I can tell that they're decent people who have some valid points of view. What I have no respect for is this blowhard right worldview, which is, I've got mine, to hell with everyone else. It's an incredibly selfish worldview. It's an incredibly dismissive, callous worldview. I mean, when you see Trump supporters standing outside immigration detention centres taking selfies, these are sick people. Sick, sick, sick. Who does that? And let's be clear, we're not talking here about violent MS-13 gang members. Those sort of criminals, good, deport them. I hope they're deported. They are bad, bad people. So if the ICE raids were just about that, it wouldn't be controversial. The controversy around ICE is it's targeting innocent people. It's targeting legal migrants. It's dehumanizing people. It's treating people like illegal aliens. It's a term I hate. Reform in the UK want to replicate that. You have racist candidates like Matt Goodwin, and yes, racist candidates like Matt Goodwin. I know that triggers my little trolling fans, but yeah, he's racist. He said that even if you're born in the UK, you're not necessarily British. That sort of othering, that sort of callous dismissal of people who have grown up their entire lives here. He's saying you're different. You're going to be treated like an outsider. And given Reform's extreme immigration policies, they would potentially have those people deported. Don't believe a word they say that it's scaremongering and they won't do it. As soon as these people get into power, they will be, full on British MAGA. They will absolutely be ruthless. They will punish legal immigrants as well as illegal ones. That's their agenda. I do not trust Reform. I think they are a far right party that has had the assertiveness to kind of polish their image a bit, so they don't look like the National Front. And they have minority members, but again, those minority members should really question the contradiction that they are in. They're supporting a party that fields candidates that says that they're not really British. So say, Yusuf, how do you respond to that? You can attack Starmer and Labour and other parties, but you're literally in a party that doesn't think you're British. So it just seems to me to be a very strange, self-effacing position. It's their right, of course, to support whatever party they want. If they want to look foolish, if they want to look like they're shooting themselves in the foot, that's their business. But I don't get it. But, I'm mentioning Trumpism and similar movements in the UK. I do think there's overlap because British Trump sycophants post some of this stuff as well. But you see how utterly shallow it is from the American ones. They tend to be really slick. They tend to wear business suits and They sort of present themselves as life coaches and inspirational people. Really, they're just grubby little sycophants of a fascist tyrant. That's what they are. They're snakes, every last one of them. And I think they deserve nothing but ridicule and contempt. I think if they come to this country, they should know that they're not welcome. I'm pleased that Vance was booed at the Winter Olympics opening ceremony, although I do not understand why he was given a podium position, because it's not like, the United States is handing over to, I suppose the next games is Los Angeles, I suppose that's the rationale behind it, but, Vance is slime, and even someone like Giorgia Meloni who panders to Trump. Now, that's actually an interesting point, that Europe's hard right so-called patriots find themselves in, because you get someone like Giorgia Meloni who's clearly cozy with Trump, yet Trump has threatened Italy along with many other countries with tariffs. That puts her in an interesting position. Does she defend Italy and push back against Trump, or does she just keep sucking up to Trump like every other Trump lackey? I don't think much of Giorgia Meloni, to be honest. I do think she's a Trump lackey. I don't think it's obviously for Italians to decide, but that's my impression of Giorgia Meloni. Is she going to show real patriotism and push back? The fact that she has allowed ICE to be on Italian soil says it all. My question for Italian patriots, are you okay with the American immigration enforcement being on Italian soil? Where's your patriotism? I do have some sympathy for American athletes. Chances are many of them are anti-Trump. It's a little bit like the position Russian athletes are in, or maybe Israeli athletes. They all get tarred with the same brush. There are Russians who've opposed Putin, but simply for their nationality, they get reviled. But we're in a situation, Trump is making America despised around the world. That's the truth. America is not popular right now. And because they live in a bubble, MAGA supporters can't see this. They think that Trump's insulting rhetoric and his hardline rhetoric makes him strong. Even within the United States, he's becoming very unpopular. This is just artificial strength because, it's bombastic, it's blowhard. But I do think Donald Trump is presiding over American decline in the long term. I really do, because countries are now, he criticised countries for going to China, and whilst I'm very critical for over-relying on China, and I am, there's a reason that they're going to China. And it's not something I really spoke about a lot in my critique of Starmer. There is a serious point here. Trump's rhetoric, Trump's hostility to Western countries is pushing those countries towards China. Is that what he wants? I personally don't think it should be a choice of choosing your poison. I don't trust Beijing or Washington right now, and I've advocated getting closer to the EU, but we can't rely on that alone, perhaps. It's but yeah, I just think that when you look at the internet, when you look at the sort of stuff that comes out that's pro-Trump, it's always these ridiculous images showing Trump as almost like a god. It's clearly AI generated. Artistically, it's quite good. I'll give them that. It looks like a proper painting. Artistically, it's actually quite good. It's not scrappy. It looks good. Artistically, the message, however, is sheer manure. It's sheer manure, because this is someone who is a con man. He's a criminal. He's a fascist. This is not someone who should be promoted as an inspirational figure. He's not. Why? Because he was lucky enough to survive assassination. Lots of bad people have survived assassination attempts. Unfortunately, with assassination, if it is successful, Trump becomes a martyr. So as much as I think he is I think Trump is poisonous on this world. And if he was to be martyred, then that's just the problem. Then you'll see the MAGA movement go into hyperdrive. You'll see a drastic loss of free speech in America. Vance is trying to do that right now. This contemptible weasel JD Vance, who dares to lecture Europe about free speech while trampling freedom in the United States. Vance, in some ways, is even more contemptible than Trump. Remember, he's young. He's in his early 40s. If he does 2 terms, this MAGA cult can be in power for a generation to come. That's a very, very alarming prospect, and it is a prospect if the Democrats don't get their act together. I mean, Vance, I mentioned Trump's one of the most unpopular presidents ever. Vance is one of the most reviled vice presidents. He may actually surpass Dick Cheney, and that will take some doing, because Cheney was a deeply controversial figure with good reason. But Vance is just beneath contempt. You know, I think he's a weasel who sold out for ambition. I'm not sure if he's a true believer. It may well be that if Trump is defeated, then these people will try and reinvent themselves. But do not be taken in by their snake charm. They are absolute, that's the point. They're snakes. Prominent MAGA supporters are snakes. They are bad people. They're not good people. They are bad people who think that compassion is a weakness. They're bad people who think that might is right. They're bad people who believe in trampling on some of the most vulnerable people in society whilst supporting some of the most powerful. This is not an admirable trait. It really isn't. So I do have deep contempt for the MAGA movement. All of it. I think it's rotten to the core. The Epstein stuff, yeah, there's other people connected to that, and yes, I will be speaking about Mandelson and Andrew soon. But MAGA is just... I know why it got to power. I get it. You know, Americans were struggling with the cost of living. The Democrats were very complacent on that, I think. And if you tell a lie enough times, people are taken in by it. Truth Social is lie central. That's the reality. That's the great paradox of our time. You know, Trump's central operation network, Truth Social, is lies. It's just sheer lies. Trumpism is lies. So I think we're in a worse position in his first term, because in his first term there were Republicans who kind of went along because they were Republicans. Now, you know, well, I don't know. I mentioned I don't know if Vance is a true believer. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he is. Maybe we really are in a position now where it's the true zealots that are in power. I mean, if you look at Trump's cabinet, this is a cabinet of extremists. You have Moscow Tulsi, who has regurgitated propaganda for foreign dictators. You have a conspiracy lunatic in charge of American healthcare. By his own admission, he has a worm in his brain, some sort of infection. You have, you know, a blowhard right-wing former Fox News pundit as defense secretary. This is just a cabinet of extremists. I can't think of a single member of Trump's cabinet who is a decent human being. I would have said Marco Rubio at one point. Not anymore. Not anymore. You know, he hails the fall of a dictator in Venezuela whilst praising a dictator in Putin, or helping to prop up a dictator in Putin, which the MAGA movement definitely has done. So their hypocrisy, their sheer moral rot, just everything about these people. One of the most contemptible things, of course, is their appropriation of Christianity. Now, Christianity is the world's biggest religion. I accept that you're going to get right-wing Christians. You're going to get aspects of Christianity that are obnoxious. But the basic tenets of Christianity, what MAGA represents, is the polar opposite of what Jesus Christ of Nazareth represented. You just need to know the basic Gospels to see that. One doesn't even need to get into a theology debate. It's just basically there. We can also find in Leviticus the passage about, I forget the exact verse it is, but the point about Israel welcoming aliens into our land. Now, if we ascribe that to today, you know, some of the world's most downtrodden people, they would have looked at America as a beacon at one point. Now they're brutalised even more when they get there. And we're seeing similar attitudes in the UK. I know that there has to be controls. I totally agree with that. I agree that criminals have to be deported, but what we see on both sides of the Atlantic, and truthfully in other European countries as well, is a dehumanisation of immigrants, and it troubles me greatly, because it is just that, a dehumanisation, treating these people like numbers. Doesn't sit well with me. Anyway, I'll wrap this up, but MAGA is filth. MAGA is poison. And the day this is consigned to history will be a wonderful day. I just hope the Democrats can get their act together. And to be clear, I do not support everything the Democrats come out with. I do not like extreme woke ideology, and if they've got any sense, they will drop that, or at least distance themselves from it. But then when you look at Democrat presidents of recent years, Clinton, Obama, Biden, none of them can truthfully be described as far left. You know, if the Democrats were really going that way, then Bernie Sanders would have been president. So I don't have a real concern that the Democrats are far left. I think there's far left components within them. That's the difference. With the Republicans, they've put the far right into power. With the Democrats, there's far left elements, but they're not really in major positions of power. You could say there's people like AOC and others, but if AOC ran for president, she would not win. She'd do even worse than Harris. So I really don't think, I honestly think Harris was a centrist sort of figure. I don't think Harris is particularly far left. For goodness sake, she was a prosecutor in California. So, Biden's probably a bit more to the left than Obama. Obama was more to the left than Clinton. So perhaps you could argue there's been a move more to the left in recent years, but I wouldn't say far left. But getting back to the start of the video, this racist video, Trump is a man-child. The fact they deleted it means he knows it was wrong. And if he's employing a staffer who put that out, if Trump had any integrity, he would fire that staffer immediately and he would publicly say, this is awful. But instead, Donald Trump's a card. He takes no ownership over it. This is the rot at the heart of the MAGA power system. It's just... what more evidence do you need that is overtly fascist? There's been previous racism in American presidents, let's be clear about that. Nixon came out with some racist statements. Woodrow Wilson and several of his contemporaries supported lynching. So I'm not saying that Trump's the first racist American president, but it is the first example I can think of where an American president has been so overtly racist about a predecessor. And remember, Trump pushed the birtherism conspiracy theory for a long time. This is what these people are about.